Comrades and friends, it's a great pleasure to speak with you today. I acknowledge all of our international guests, the elected leaderships of all unions in our movement, the newly elected President, Michelle O'Neill, and the returned ACTU leadership team, and all delegates, all of you here at Congress. Union Aid Abroad, APHEDA, the global justice organisation of the Australian union movement, has very proudly represented our movement internationally for 33 years. It was at the ACTU Congress of 1985 that APHEDA, as it was known then, was formally established. The brainchild of the ACTU president at the time, Cliff Dolan, along with an Australian nurse, Helen McHugh. I became a union member that very same year that APHEDA was established, 33 years ago. And as a former union delegate and union organiser, I certainly wear my Australian unionism with great pride when I work with unionists around the world. Union Aid Abroad struggle to support to social movements and union movements all around the world has been part of the broader global struggle for liberation, freedom and democracy. It has worked for human rights, for workers' rights. Importantly, it's been a vehicle for Australian unionists to be connected to the world through the sharing of skills, through exchange, through practical financial support, to help build strong movements, to express our movement's international solidarity. But our world is in danger. Corporations dominate, working hand in hand with conservative governments in so many countries globally. If you look at the global picture, we hang on a precipice, faced with rapidly rising inequality. Yes, here at home, as we heard from Sally yesterday, but in almost every single country in our region, with massive exploitation across all supply chains, with conditions akin to forced labour and often bonded labour, with migrant workers where liberties and rights are simply stripped from them as a result of entering into an employment contract in another country. We face planetary destruction through global warming, which threatens us as workers. Everybody knows that our region is at the highest risk of extreme weather events and the death and destruction wrought upon workers as a result. But what you might not know is that the impact of heat at work caused by global warming will affect millions of people in our region, and it's enormous. Think about the impact on workers in Cambodia working outdoors, in the construction industry, for example, and unable to work 10 hours a day due to the impact of heat, so they cut their hours to 7. They lose take-home pay. Global warming will also cut the GDP of poor countries, further increasing that impact. And then there are the despots who rule with incredible personal wealth, whether it's a US president making policy by tweet or a Filipino president boasting about killing 20,000 civilians within 2 years of office. So the urgency of our charter as unionists is focusing us like never before. They seek to represent the 1%, not the 99%, and only global organised movements like ours can hold them to account. Every year, the International Trade Union Confederation rates countries on indicators of human rights and union rights, gauging countries in 5 areas: civil liberties, rights to establish or join unions, rights to conduct trade union activities, rights to bargain, rights to strike. That global index rated the top 10 countries, worst countries in the world for working people, and 3 are in our region: Cambodia, as we've just heard, the Philippines and Bangladesh. Conditions in Asia Pacific saw an increase in violence, criminalisation of the right to strike, rise in arrests, detention, imprisonment of union activists and trade union leaders, in our region in particular. So just as we prioritise in Australia to fight inequality and corporate greed, so too do unions in every country in our region. We need to urgently change the rules internationally to stop the massive wage exploitation through unchecked corporate greed with its corrupting influences on governments. Governments who can take action to regulate nationally against worker exploitation and against modern slavery. It's up to us to support the collective organising of workers most exploited along the supply chain. Yes, in our domestic supply chains, but also in international supply chains. We need brave and courageous strategies that we agree to fund to fight the injustice. So we as unionists must embrace a new vision of human development, free from exploitation, free from discrimination of all kinds, whether it's racism, sexism, discrimination based on disability or sexuality. With 240 million people moving every year for work globally and 45 million in modern slavery, make no doubt we need new global rules. The challenge of a new form of labour-led development must ensure we support unionists in every country to organise and campaign to change the rules at national level, together with our coordinated global activism of our joint movements. But there are so many global stories of organised movements challenging and fighting back against the extreme wealth and inequality at workplace level and well beyond. We know about the campaign by garment workers in Cambodia for increases in the minimum wage, or the global campaign to end the kafala system or the bonded labour system in Qatar. Or daily, workers in Myanmar are fighting back to reinstate sacked union activists. Or where the combined union and social movements of South Korea held a corrupt president and Samsung to account and changed the government. These campaigns inspire us all that it is possible to win, but it needs organised people, resources and money, as we know. Globally, every Australian union is linked into a global union structure to coordinate campaigning along industry lines. And there are sister organisations to Union Aid Abroad that also exist in many countries. Together, working cooperatively, we have shown our movement can dent global capital big time. But those rising inequality statistics mean we aren't winning fast enough. This is why future Australian governments must fund trade union development. Wealthy first countries like, for example, the US, Japan, the Netherlands, Norway, Finland, Sweden and Denmark all recognise the role of trade unions and fund trade union development within their overseas aid budgets. This arrangement has existed for decades, regardless of which political party is in power. But to date, no Australian government has been willing to do this, and this much must change. Because it's only with labour-led development that with organised, united trade union movements can workers win the demands for equality and just wages. What we know is true for every country in the world. Collective power of union works. Finally, I want to let you know about how important individual membership of Union Aid Abroad is to our movement's contribution to the global struggle. We workers will always be at the grist of global capital unless we have organised people to fight back in every country. I know you know that, and in today's global world, we can't think we're immune to the organised attacks of capital. We are not. Our flagship campaign to ban asbestos in Asia is a perfect example of this. Despite our own Australian ban on asbestos, we remain vulnerable to illegally imported asbestos products because there is no global ban. So I'm asking every one of you to join Union Aid Abroad at this Congress if you are not already. Hands up those of you who are members already. Woo! There's a good few here. Fantastic. For those of you that aren't, visit our stall before the end of today and sign up. Get active in one of our activist groups around the country too. Because we know every worker, everywhere, deserves the right to join a union. Life without a union, together we can change that. I hope you'll join me in that struggle. Thank you.